All right. Welcome, everybody, back to the Compassionate Capitalist podcast. And if you're watching on video, hello there. We are going to be talking about a very important subject to every business and every entrepreneur and every investor that wants to have a company that grows in revenue and profit in order to reach the milestones as the reason why they invested, to create the wealth, the reason why they started their business, and necessary to create the kind of positive exit that is required for a return on investment and for the entrepreneur to create the wealth that was worth all the time and money and effort that was, and blood, sweat, and tears that were started with the business when they first got in. That's called sales, right? Some people, for some people, it's a dirty word. If you're a technician, a technical person, an inventor, it's like selling and people interaction is tough. We're going to talk about that with my guest today, John Klymshyn. I'm going to introduce him in just a second. He's going to wave right now. And so sometimes, but there are things that a founder can do from the very beginning that sets their organization up for success. And then if you find yourself in a position as a company where you're stuck and you're not really growing the way you want, you're not really, as a founder, you're finding that you can't seem to get the right people in the jobs or keep the right people in the jobs. John Klymshyn, the business generator, is going to talk about that today. So let me tell you a little bit about John, and then he's gonna take the show away, and we're gonna have a great conversation. So John is the author of several industry-leading books and audiobooks. He's an international speaker and a Navy veteran. He is the mindful leadership coach whose motto is "Your path to the C-suite is all about the language." His company is the Business Generator, Inc., where for 21 years he's been providing inspirational management training and coaching for C-suite and sales teams. He's also the podcast host for Your Startup Advisors. So I recommend you find that. And you can also get it at his website, which is Klymshyn. His last name is spelled KLYMSHYN.com. His clients, a lot of testimonials, they finally call him Coach K. So welcome, John, Coach K, to the Compassionate Capitalist podcast.
Karen, it's a thrill to be here. And not only do I love the title of your podcast, I'm really thrilled. And what drew me to you, I'm thrilled to be part of this because what drew me to you was your mindset. And mindset really sets the stage for everything. You were kind enough to quote me there saying that your path to the C-suite is all about the language. When an inventor turns into someone who is a startup founder, then they must grow into being an executive if they want to stay with the company for any period of time.
Right.
In order for them to have a successful, profitable exit, I slow down and say those words cautiously, carefully, and with as much articulation as I can. A successful, profitable exit means that you need to instill and to frame some leadership in your organization that is going to do exactly what you said earlier. Not only will it attract talent, which is very difficult in any economic environment, you're going to be able to retain talent, and that increases the perceived value of your organization. If you can say, that person started with us, we are 3 years in, here's our business plan, and here's how we plan to exit and why we plan to exit, those people that bring talent, skill, experience, and initiative that can say that we are part of the brain trust and we will stay after the sale, that increases, again, and you know this better than anyone, the perceived value of the organization. When someone is asked, so how will you grow? We love scaling. Not every business is capable of scaling, but how will you grow? Because investors want growth and return.
Right.
They don't want drama. They don't want long stories. It's kind of like Mark Cuban says on Shark Tank, the longer the backstory, the less I believe in the future of the business.
Oh, yeah.
So how will you grow? Well, we've thought about that. And here's what that organization will look like. And here's how we have attracted and will continue to attract the right people in the right roles. You were kind enough to mention the situations and the opportunities I've been fortunate enough to be a part of. And that's exactly what we did. We stuck a stake in the ground. We did something I call planting the flag. And we said, we're going to approach sales and this invisible, almost ignored profession called sales management, and we are going to do it better than anyone in our industry. And that was a compelling invitation to me from the vice president of sales of one of the most successful startups of the last 15 years, when they were running at a solid, profitable rate. He sat me down in a conference room and said, this company is going to have the best sales managers in the world, and you're going to help us create that. Now they run a rate of $3 billion in revenue a year.
And that was, can you
It's
say?
called Indeed.
Yes.
It is the single largest job site in the world. They're in India, Brazil, all over Europe, North America, Eurasia. They are in Australia. And when I started with them, they had a 28-person sales team. Now they have 3,700 salespeople. Their sales leadership event that they do every year, of course, now it's virtual. It may go back to in person. The first sales leadership event we did, there were 90 people at it. Now there are 350.
Wow. Right. Yeah. They do. Yeah. Well, this show's not about Indeed, but I have a little bit of inside knowledge about it because of they have really figured out a way to expand their universe, if you will, and engage. And the idea of hiring better is something that they help their clients with, and they probably got some of that just within yourself. And so I don't want to. Let's talk about that, because I watched one of your videos, and we might be getting ahead a little bit here, but I just want to, it just seems like a good time to talk about it, because I thought it was really important when you talk about the triangle of this, right?
Yes.
And one of the key points was, and I've heard this in other places, and you said it really great. It was perfect. A sales guy knows how to sell himself in an interview, but so much is looking back at what they've accomplished does not predict what their potential is in the organization. And so talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to go into the whole low churn aspect, which is a whole nother key part of sales and continuity with your customers. So go ahead.
Okay. So what you're referring to is something called the sales management triangle. People can find that on YouTube. They can find it on my website. Thank you for bringing it up. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it as quote, simple as possible. Now, when I say simple, that doesn't mean easy, but what are sales managers all about? They're the three things on the points of that triangle. And I'll talk about that in a second. Salespeople are the best interviewers on earth, because they are so good at selling themselves. And what I encourage and what I teach and what I coach sales leaders, sales managers, sales directors, VPs of sales, chief revenue officers, is your interview should not be about what the salesperson has done. It should be about who the salesperson is. What you want to do, resumes are great, fine, and wonderful. I was a recruiter at the beginning of my career, and I work with a lot of staffing companies. And every time I'm at American Staffing Association or National Association of Personnel Services, and I say, everyone in this room knows that resumes are 82.627% fiction. Not that people misrepresent themselves, but a resume is an invitation to an interview. It's not the same thing. And an interview is about getting into a conversation where you understand who the person is. And I have two fantastic questions that every organization that has adopted these questions has come back to me and said, Coach, you would not believe the answers I've been hearing. And all of a sudden, I've got this window in my mind that says, now I'm starting to understand who these people are. So one of them is, what are you reading? A salesperson needs to be a learner, not a student. A student will read the book, get the answers, answer the test, and move on with their life. A learner will highlight the book, will put Post-its in the book, fold pages in the book, record themselves reading passages from the book, and listen to them when they're getting ready to go to work. A salesperson, a true pro, in sales is a learner. They want the recorded video Zoom meeting because they can't take the notes fast enough because they want to absorb it. So what are you reading? Maybe they'll say, are you talking about novels? Are you talking about magazines? You tell me. Because number one, if they respond with a question, that's a stall tactic. Number two, if they immediately start telling you about the 2 or 3 things that they're reading, fantastic sign. I don't care if they're reading about Hemi engines. I don't care if they're reading about beekeeping. The fact that they are reading tells me that they are a learner. And then the second one has never failed me in over 20 years. So it's not about generations. It's not about economic conditions. It's about humanity. So when I say earlier that your path to the C-suite is all about the language determines your mindset. Your mindset fuels your intentions, and then your intentions are sensed and responded to by the language you craft and deliver. So the question that I love, and so many sales leaders that I've given this to love, is, what's the toughest thing you've ever done? When people stop and their eyes go off into the distance, they're searching the hard drive for a couple of different things. One, how transparent do I want to be? 2, what do I think they're looking for? 3, how comfortable am I sharing something that was very difficult for me? And I will tell you, Karen, when someone starts talking in half a second about watching one of my parents pass away, or dealing with the loss of this, or the transition that I was forced to go through by situations that were out of my control, no matter what it is, what's the toughest thing you've ever done? Notice that's not about any of the points on the triangle, but what it does is, and I'll mention the triangle in a moment, what it does is it provides great clarity for the interviewer.
Yeah.
Because it tells the interviewer, if they can listen, it tells them, what's this person all about?
Right.
What's important to them and what have they been through? That to me, because, one of the things that I put on my blog often is true character is revealed when we respond to adversity. Not if, because we all respond to it. Some of us may run and hide. Some of us may fight back. Some of us may develop resilience. We all respond to adversity.
Right.
The question is how we respond to that adversity, right? So when we are taking an organization to the point where it is time to garner additional funding, more money, so that there can be a better return on investment, or there can be an exit, or both, starts with attracting and retaining the right people. And then the sales management triangle makes it very simple. Not easy, but simple. Because what it does is it provides that thing I mentioned earlier, clarity. When we have clarity, we are not easily distracted. When we have clarity, we know that that's the guitar I'm going to play at 6 o'clock tonight. It's simple, right?
Yeah.
So the sales management triangle is as follows. Number 1, hit quota. I love when people say they're going to blow their quota out. Before you can blow any quota out, how about you hit that number consistently for me? Quarter after quarter. The best sales leaders I have seen, when they are asked, what do you think we will do this quarter? Their response is, I'll tell you what I know we will do, and then I'll tell you what I would like to see us do. So they're practical and pragmatic, but they're also visionary. If they can create the right harmony among their folks, then they have a shot at exceeding the quota, but their assignment is to hit the quota. And when they do, and they do it consistently, everybody happy.
Yeah.
Right? Hit quota. Second, low churn. Low churn of customers, low churn of people on the team, because every person that leaves that you have to replace, it costs you 3 times as much to start that person, to onboard that person, to train that person, to prep that person, and to weave them into a team. 3 times as much as keeping someone you already have.
Yeah, and it also, I just want to add, because I see this when there is a situation where companies have that churn, they lose all the goodwill that they have developed, not all of it, but a good chunk of it they developed with the customer, because they got a revolving door on their reps, and the customer is like, what's going on with this company? How dysfunctional? And when it becomes an opportunity to consider a competitor, they absolutely will. They lose their loyalty to the company.
Exactly. Low churn affords you internal and external loyalty. And that's something you can take to the bank. That's something you can take to investors. That sales director who runs a team of 11 people has been with us for 24 months. Wow. So they have weathered storms. They have hired new people. They have onboarded. They have consistently hit their quota. That's magic. That is one music to the ear of an investor.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, we set our objectives and we hit them. And they're aggressive because our salespeople want to win. They don't want it coming to them. They are going out after it at a high integrity, highly professional level.
Yeah.
So the first is hit quota. Second is low churn. And third, no drama. We don't want any drama on the sales team. We don't want histrionics. We don't want, oh, well, they did this and I said that. And let's all agree that we are sitting at the adult table. And at the adult table, we take accountability and responsibility and we perform.
Yeah.
Sales, Karen, you know this better than anyone. Sales is a performance profession. I love the fact that you hit your quota last year. What are you going to do next?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit, because sometimes churn comes from that drama, and that's a toxic culture that a company may make. And that's a whole nother podcast and conversation and stuff. But a lot of times it deals with the compensation systems, and you speak a little bit about this. And I've seen this in companies that I know people that work for, or within my own world as a salespeople, and then they'll manipulate the sales the combination of the compensation system and when somebody goes into management, right? So they talk about, well, the sales rep makes more money, and there's a different skill set between sales rep and sales management, but also there's egos at the top that can happen. I have a friend who last year worked his thing, brought in significant more business into the business than they had before, why they hired him, made more money than the general manager. And so then the next year they changed the compensation system so he wouldn't make as much money as the manager. And they weren't getting, I mean, the business was making lots of money, right? But they weren't, now he's changed how he deals with the customers. He doesn't offer them as many perks. It's all measured something else. You know what I mean? And it's like
Yes.
they hurt their business by trying to limit his ability to make money.
Okay. Anytime you're going to limit any opportunity for someone to grow, then your head is not on right. Every business is going to run into trouble if we don't want the salespeople making too much money. Then you know what? Then you should be the one sitting in that chair. Then, and I am unapologetic on this, Karen. Here's the thing. To use a circus analogy, we don't have a lot of circuses in our society anymore, but I'm sure people can look it up and get an idea of what it's all about. In the circus, the lion tamer is much better compensated than the ringmaster.
Ah, okay.
Because the lion tamer is putting themselves much more at risk than the guy in the top hat and the shiny shoes.
Yeah.
The lion tamer is doing work behind the scenes that no one will ever see. I call it the glorious drudgery of what selling is all about. And here's the thing. The second you become jealous or indignant about the income of the salesperson, you've lost sight of the purpose of your organization. And the purpose of your organization is not to generate revenue. It's to generate profit. And there is a big difference between those two words, concepts, and experiences. Yeah. I love when startups or even companies that are 3 years and they're in revenue and they say, the purpose of the company is to make money. I'm sorry. No, it's not. It's to generate profit so that you can not only put money in your pockets and the pockets of your employees, but get a return on investment for your investors. Because guess what? They took a risk. They showed up at Vegas with their pockets bulging, and they were willing to take a risk on one roll of the dice, and that was you. That you could lead, and this is the hardest thing for people that have founded companies, to grow. Not to grow the organization, to grow and say, I am much more interested in directing activities than doing all of the activities.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, finish your thought. I want to talk about the founder element of that
Okay.
too. Okay.
Well, and I think this story may feed into it. When I was mentoring startups at NYU's business incubator, uh, they we had a relationship with an organization that had a genius product. I'm talking, wow. Everybody that heard about it was, wow. We got to the point where we had 9 employees. I say we because I was on the board and I was an advisor, and I had a ghost equity stake, which meant once they hit a certain amount of revenue, then my equity stake would become real. And then as they grew in profit, it was going to be an ongoing thing for me. The founder, the inventor, of course, named himself CEO. And when we had 9 employees, he walked in one day and said to everyone, I need to see every incoming and outgoing email that ever goes on in this organization.
Yeah, I know. Oh yeah.
His
Yeah.
salesperson quit the following week. 2 of his engineers walked out the day after.
Yeah. Right. And there goes the company. And, so let's like that. I have this phrase that I do when I'm coaching a startup, and is, do you want to be a poor founder? You want to be a poor CEO or a rich founder? Which do you want to be? Right. Because
Yes.
sometimes you got to get out of your way. And one of the biggest challenges that I even had when I was starting up my decade-old version of this, and when we were doing events and we were doing all these things, and running the angel investor group and a consulting business and all that kind of stuff. And I felt this, but I had a sales coach that said, you have to come up with your sales processes and be able to, you're not the only one that can sell. You got to find people that know how to sell, and they will sell what you're selling in your company. If you can provide them the tools to be able to do that, and the knowledge about what you ever do that. So you got to get it out of your head, because you can never grow if you believe that you are the only one that can sell in your company. And you talked about that when we talked about this before the podcast. So explain a little bit about how a founder can go from being able to release that control, that fear, because that's really driven by fear.
Yes.
Right. And how that mindset of what you're talking about, self-speak, the language that they use, and how they can move out of that. And also with the idea that if an investor is looking at a company, what is something that, I think you used a phrase, I think you might have something here. So what is something how does an investor identify if that founder is going to be one of those kinds of, can't build a team?
Right. Well, I appreciate that you're quoting from when we had an earlier conversation. I will assess businesses, and I want to know 3 things. Number 1, is it a brilliant idea? Number 2, is it beautifully realized? Number 3, can it be sold at a profit? And that was my criteria for the organizations I would mentor at NYU and since. And when I see that those 3 things are in harmony, not one is dominant, but they're all 3 in harmony, then I say, I think you might have something here. I'm working with an organization right now that is a brilliant combination of what recruiting is all about and how technology can support the search for qualified candidates. They're just really, really interesting, and I believe they're going to grow. So I do want to do a shout out to those guys. When I believe that you have something here, that means that your path to the C-suite, like you said, do you want to be a poor CEO or a wealthy founder? Well, the founder needs to be prepared for the fact that once the organization gets to a certain girth, whether it's headcount or revenue or both, when it gets to a certain girth, they get to select how they spend their time. And and the ones that struggle cannot answer me when I say, how do you want to spend your time a year from today? And if they say, how do you want to spend your time? It's the one unrenewable resource. And if you don't have a vision of what you want your day to look like a year from today, you're not thinking strategically. You have a job. Well, if you wanted a job, you could have gone to work for someone else.
Yeah.
No, I have a vision and I want to create something. Well, then let's do that. And let's make sure you stay the hell out of the way.
Right. Exactly.
I'll tell you, Karen, my cousin built a very successful business importing lenses for security cameras, both for residential and commercial. Did extremely well. He got to the point where I said to him, you need to hire a professional manager. He was a monster sales guy. I mean, unbelievable, the deals that he would close with major organizations, but he hated the admin. Well, then release that. If you can't trust someone to handle the admin for you and you're trying to do both, you're never going to sleep. And guess what? He didn't. He got to a point where he reached a diminishing return, and 3 years later, the business was gone.
That's
Every
incredible.
business is, it's a shame, because a business is a living, breathing entity, and it is a forum for creativity. And when you can feed people a vision, here's who we are going to be, here's why we do it this way, they will jump on. And the people that don't fit, as in Jim Collins' Good to Great book says, the organization will expel the people that don't fit. You as a leader don't need to work to make that happen. When your culture is so solid and robust and exciting, it's going to attract people, and it's going to attract people that will do the things that you should direct as opposed to do.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So as we start to wrap up, I want to remind folks to go to Klymshyn.com, KLYMSHYN.com.
Yes.
And of course, my website is KarenRands.co. So you can see how I work with entrepreneurs and investors and get access to all the different podcasts and resources I have there, and get the book. If you're new to investing and you want to learn how to apply the principles we talked about today, as well as identify opportunities, decide how you mitigate your risk on that, evaluate deals, that's the book to get. So what have we not covered, John, that you want to cover? And I mean, of course, it could be 10 hours. Obviously, you do lots of workshops and things like that on this, but in the next few minutes, what's a gold nugget for folks to take away with? Because you've delivered a lot of them so far.
Thank you.
Give me another one.
Start thinking as an executive, and begin sentences in your mind with, as an executive, I need to be concerned about blank. As an executive, my role with my people is blank. As an executive, the next time I'm sitting in front of an investor that can take us to an entirely new realm, I'm going to talk, act, and comport myself as an executive. As an executive means that you have a concern for the business, you have a heart for your people, and you have a vision for the future. That combination that's dynamite.
Yes.
Again, sounds simple. Doesn't mean it's easy.
Right. Exactly. And on that note, great way to wrap this up. I want to tell everybody, do that, and onwards and upwards. Thank you very much for being on the show today, John.
It's my pleasure, Karen.
Okay.